Hey, sister, how are you feeling in your body today? I know that I am in this phase of just getting my period. And, it's funny. There's definitely, as you learn to sync with your cycle more, as you learn to kind of honor this part, I'm more and more aware of how your cycle almost reminds me of that movie Inside Out, where joy learns from sadness that really we need sadness for joy. And what I have learned is when we honor our cycle, when we know that we should be eating certain amounts or we need to eat more at certain times of the month, when we know there's times to be more introspective and times to be more outgoing, when we know there's times to push ourselves in our fitness and times to dial it back, it really does even out the ups and downs. And it starts to feel less like a tsunami of emotion and more like a rolling wave. But what we don't get to avoid, and what I become more and more aware of, is this important piece that is not to just constantly push through. Part of being someone who has female physiology is learning to go with that flow, right? To recognize that there are times of our month where we should surrender a little bit, where we should allow ourselves to feel all of the emotions of that phase. And for a lot of us, our luteal phase into our menstrual phase, right? That real PMS time into our bleed time, whether you're regularly bleeding still or not, our hormones are still there, right? If you're not regularly bleeding, if you're irregularly bleeding, I should say, it's really more about not having enough progesterone to actually create the bleed. The hormones are still there. So the waves are still there. And again, when we go with that flow, I think we can have so much more self-compassion and so much more awareness that it's okay to sit on the couch and watch a sad movie and let yourself just feel the things in that moment. And when we embrace those times and surrender to those times, as opposed to trying to push through those times, then it can be really quite cathartic, the release that comes with it. So all that to say is today was one of those days for me where I just wanted to eat some salty food, some extra salty carbs, and have a really good cry and release, and just release all the emotions of the last few weeks. And whether it's been crazy or whether you're just really actually surrendering and feeling the things, I think it's important to honor each of these phases so that it doesn't eke out and seep out in different areas, right? So that the ragey time doesn't feel so ragey, but that more it's a space for us to release and really express our frustration and anger, that the emotional time is a time for us to, again, just release all of the emotions that we're having. Anyway, that was just something that had been on my mind. But do you ever wonder, if you're missing something? Like, I used to have this feeling all the time when I was trying to push myself forward through life, whether it was towards fitness goals or somewhere else in my body, or trying to lose weight, or whether it was trying to reach a goal in my life in somewhere in career, or, in anything. I would have these moments like I was just missing something, like I was just doing something wrong. And if I could just find the answer, the secret, the medication, the perfect supplement, that maybe I would finally feel better. And then I'm just missing it somehow, like someone is holding back this secret. Or in my darker moments, I would think maybe this is just me. That feeling that you can start to have when you have felt badly for so long, like out of sync of yourself for so long, that hopelessness feeling where you wonder if this is just going to be how you feel for the rest of your life. It's hard, it's dark, and I have been there. And the truth was, I was missing something, and it was a big thing. And I've seen it again and again and again in my clients. And it's something that we always have to work on. We work on this in Midlife Mojo. I work on this with my one-on-one clients. It's an unavoidable part that we have quite forgotten as women in life. And I know this because in women who are much more balanced, in women who don't suffer as much in perimenopause, this is a piece they are not missing. So I'm excited to share with you in this episode, and we're going to learn about what you, what me, and what most women are missing that is keeping us stuck. The tool that I used that actually gets us unstuck. And really that ultimate hormone hack that you need to give time for, that I know is going to be a part of the answer. And it's not sexy and it's not simple, but it's easier than you think. So let's dive into this because I think it's really, really important. You hear me talk all the time about what phase you are in your healing, right? If you are really struggling with, heavy periods, with really, as I was saying, tsunami-like PMS symptoms, with anxiety, with not sleeping, with digestive issues, with gaining weight when you really don't feel like you deserve to be, if you're really suffering with that brain fog and that exhaustion, then we know we're in this phase. It's called the inflammation phase. This is when the body can't even deal with the hormone imbalance that you have because it's too busy dealing with the inflammation. It's the top priority, the major workload happening in the body. There's too much inflammation, which is a major stressor, that it can't even get behind that piece. And it's a really important, critical time, just like if you were suffering with a diagnosable disease, you need to do things, you need to follow a protocol, you need to follow what your healthcare practitioner is telling you in order to heal, right? Like we break an ankle, we have to cast it, we've got to rest it in order to heal. So there's a very critical phase of eliminating your inflammation that we have to go through. And a lot of us try to avoid it. A lot of us don't honor it. We try to give it a week or two, or maybe 5 days, and we start to feel better, but then we go back. And every time we don't give it and honor it the proper amount of time, which is usually 4 to 6 weeks, it's almost like we might start to get a bit of a scab over a wound. And then we start picking that scab again. So it's a really important piece because what comes next is just as critical, right? In order for the body to actually address the hormone imbalance that's happening, and to give some perspective on that, why this shows up so much more significantly in women in perimenopause is because we are becoming more naturally imbalanced, right? The amount of hormones coming at us are less because we're shifting from being like reproductively driven to no longer needing to reproduce. This is what's actually happening in our body. And our body, as well as our brain, because of this workload, is becoming way more sensitive to everything else. So you could have lived, worked out, eaten a certain way for so long, and now all of a sudden it's just not capable because it's trying to do this other job. And it's such an important part that we do that piece of healing. But once you've done that healing, and this is what we do sometimes I do this for myself, even when I'm not in major hormonal chaos anymore. I do this for myself 2, 3, 4 times a year. We do this in the challenges in the perimenopause posse. We do this in midlife mojo. It's a really critical step. And I always do this with my one-on-one clients. We take this time and really lean into eliminating the inflammation in all areas of your life. But once we start to reduce that elimination, once that healing has actually happened, that open wound of inflammation has actually closed in our body, some of the benefits are we start sleeping better, we start having more consistent energy, we start feeling like we can do more again. And our natural inclination is to go right back to doing all the things we used to do. And again, this is why we can reach this point in our life and be working out the same way we always were and be eating the same way we always were, but feeling worse. This was very much what happened to me. And again, I hear this all the time. If this is you, please reach out and let me know, because I know there's a rational explanation for why this is happening. But once we calm that, once we heal that wound, we shift into this phase of healing that I like to call healing and repair. And it feels a little bit like a limbo zone, a no man's zone, where you're now starting to feel better. You don't feel great. You're not right at the results that you want to be yet. The body finally has the ability to focus on the hormone imbalance. But with that hormone imbalance, we need to start looking at another key piece of the puzzle that is often what's making our imbalance worse. Because our hormone imbalance, because the shifting of these hormones right now, right, is coming both emotionally as well as physically from the decisions, we cannot just look at our food and look at our workouts to find the answer for why we're feeling this way. There is a much more significant piece of the puzzle that so many of us as women have missed for so long. And in holistic healthcare and in integrative nutrition, we call it the primary food wheel. I learned this from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, which is a really great school to educate on this. But we talk about the fact that we have primary food, which is the food on our plate. Or sorry, we have secondary food, which is the food on our plate. And then we have primary food. And it's called primary because it's so important and critical to our joy and our longevity and our fulfillment and our happiness. In our culture, we often fixate so much on smaller things in life to avoid the bigger things. And we've also been taught culturally through media, through social media, especially as women, to really be constantly thinking about the food we're eating, thinking about the workouts we're doing. And those are important, of course, but they're just two pieces of a huge puzzle that is critical for us to look at when it comes to what is keeping us balanced mentally and physically and emotionally in our lives. So you start by healing the inflammation in our body. And of course, we look at that with our 4 health pillars, right? How am I sleeping? How can I improve my sleep? How am I moving? How can I improve my movement that reduces inflammation? How am I eating? How can I improve my eating that we can do to reduce inflammation? And how am I managing stress and finding pleasure, stimulating that vagus nerve, right? Those are our 4 key health pillars. That's what we focus on in the inflammation phase. That's always the first step if you're really, really struggling. And then we shift into this phase where, again, we want to kind of hold strong. We want to deepen those pillars of health, of course, but we want to take this extra energy that we now have in the healing and repair phase. And it really does remind me of, like, you get this, the cast comes off and you're going to physiotherapy, but it's not, and we want to make sure we're having full range of motion of that joint again, of that broken piece again. And so we can't just dive right back into how things were. But this is a really important time where I knew that I learned about primary food. And primary food is everything from your home environment to your spirituality, to your relationships, to your career, to your home cooking, to your hobbies and your joy and your pleasure. It's the things in your life that really, really matter at the end of the day. And we can hit perimenopause and in this midlife time and really start to fixate, of course, on our body and how our body feels and what am I eating? What should I be eating? What am I not eating? When we calm that beast a little through inflammation, the next step is really to shift our focus to look on this primary food wheel. And it's to look at our relationships. It's to look at our relationship with spirituality. It's to look at our environment around us. It's to look at our fulfillment in our career. Because these are, and look at our feeling around finances, around the finances in our life. Because these are major areas of what I like to call stress faucets, right? That if we're not paying attention, the stress can be constantly pouring in and we can ignore it and avoid it because these are bigger issues for us. They're not as easy to fix as maybe changing our food or changing our workout regimen, right? So once we calm that beast, we shift into this other piece. And it's when I look at the primary food wheel as a really important tool, for me, I like to look at all of the categories on it and start to really rate myself out of 10 in each of these categories to decide which one I'm struggling with the most, which one I'm really feeling the most stress from or the most unsatisfaction in. Because even if maybe you're not maybe your social life isn't stressful, but you don't really have one, that is a missing piece of your puzzle. And that adds a stress. It adds a layer of something missing in your life. So when we reach this next phase, if you're in this place of healing and repair and you're thinking, well, I'm missing something else. I just feel restless. I don't know what it is. I don't feel great. Before we can dive in back into leveling up our nutrition or leveling up our fitness or diving back into something deeper in our life to thrive in, we really need to make sure our foundation of our overall health is sound. And we do that again by looking at these pieces. And I know for me, when I rated mine, I was really missing some key pieces of my life. I didn't have a great connection to spirituality, and I didn't have a great connection to how I felt in some of my relationships. And I didn't feel very strong in certain of these pieces of the puzzle. And it was going back to looking at those things and really taking some time to brainstorm what I needed to feel more fulfilled in that area to round out my life again. Because that's what makes a healthy and fulfilled and satisfied life. And when we are very fulfilled in all of those other categories of what we call primary food, then we are less apt to use substances or secondary food or fitness or hustle or anything else to numb and fill the void that is not being filled by the other pieces of our puzzle. And if we avoid this piece and we skip right into leveling ourselves up now that we're starting to feel a little bit better, then we will always land right back where we were. That imbalance will get worse, because to stay balanced in life, we really need to be more well-rounded. And that's going to look different to everybody, right? Your fulfillment in your career is going to look different than my fulfillment in my career. And it doesn't matter that those are different. It only matters that you're getting closer to a 10 and I'm getting closer to a 10. So the tool is to look at the primary food wheel and really rate yourself on some of these key categories. How do you feel about your home environment out of 10? How do you feel about your relationship out of 10? How do you feel about your social life out of 10? How do you feel about your finances out of 10? How do you feel about your like home cooking out of 10? How do you feel about your spirituality out of 10? And you find the lowest one or the lowest two, and then you take some time to think about what could help you start to be reconnected with that. What could tighten that stress faucet and slow the stress there, or create more fulfillment in that area? And this is what brings the joie de vivre, the excitement. If you've ever met someone who just feels like they sparkle a little, who just seems so alive, it's always because their primary food wheel is more fulfilled. We don't have to have a perfect, quote unquote, plate of food in front of us at all times in order for us to thrive. We don't have to have a perfect regimented fitness routine in order for us to thrive, but we do need to be constantly working and aware of the overall fulfillment of our life. And sister, this is the most important and the ultimate hormone hack I can give to you, is that once you've done the work to reduce the inflammation in your body, that you take the time to really look at your life and decide what's missing. And that's really the gift of midlife, right? That's the gift of perimenopause and this shifting, because we're becoming more sensitive and more aware. And ultimately, that subconscious drive to procreate settles in us. Now we become way more open to realizing what we're missing and how we can be more fulfilled in our lives. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you are stuck in the inflammation piece, if you're really suffering, I want you to reach out. Get on a one-on-one call with me. Get on the wait list for Midlife Mojo. Let's get you healed so we can focus on this next piece, because it is absolutely step 2 in your healing process and you can't skip it. You absolutely can't. And after that, once you've healed those 2 pieces, once you become aware, of course, of what else you're missing in your life and start to put those pieces into place, your relationships become more fulfilled, your libido picks up, your joy in life gets better, you feel more fulfilled at all overall, and you're just less inclined to obsess about what you're getting to eat and what you're not getting to eat, what what calories you're burning and what you're not burning, right? It allows us to have more fulfillment in a greater area of our life that isn't so consumed on smaller pieces of our pie. We need that overall balance. Once we move through that piece and we brought that to our awareness and we've started to implement that piece, we can actually shift into leveling up towards the goal that we want. If your goal is to, run a marathon or put on muscle or lose a lot of weight, whatever it might be for you, or go after that major career goal or save for a big trip, you'll actually have the bandwidth and the motivation and drive behind you, like the foundational support behind you to be able to do it. If you've ever found yourself as someone you want something and you start and you never finish, and you start and you never finish, this is the piece you're missing. We need to slow down, surrender to the process, do the healing, shift into the repair, and then we get to optimize. And when you optimize, when you go after that goal of starting a certain workout program, when you go after that goal of running that Ironman, and you go after that goal of getting, the raise or starting the business or going on the retreat or learning a new skill or, planning a major special trip for your family, you no longer get burnt out in the process, and you get there so much faster because you've done the underlying work. It always reminds me of how we teach our kids to read. We teach them first the letters of the alphabet. What are the letters, right? It's the first line that we teach them. And then we teach them the sounds of the letters. And then they know the letter and they know the sound the letter makes. And then we teach them to put those letters together in a combination, right? And that's how we learn to read. And it's the same when it comes to healing and thriving in our body in perimenopause and menopause and beyond. We have to start at the beginning and go through the process, making sure that everything is in working order as we go. So that is the ultimate hormone hack that you need. You need to take the time to heal, and then you need to shift into your repair phase, where we're looking at all the aspects of our life that have cracks in it, that need to be patched, right? That need to be fixed and need to be healed. All right, sister. I want you to go out and I want you to use this tool to be more in your life and not just less on a scale. This is where you discover about yourself. And this is where you set yourself up for the best success, the most energy, the leanest body, if that's what you're going for, that you have ever had. And overall, in the process, you get the most beautiful, fulfilling life that you've ever had. All right. We'll catch you on the next episode, sister. And until then, again, be more in your life and not just less on a scale.